Okay, so this is probably one of the more difficult of the lessons that we're doing. This will be, this is section 4. So, so what we're going to talk about today is something called phase shifts. Sorry, I went too far. Phase shifts and vertical shifts, and we're going to continue with periods and amplitudes. We're going to be able to write a whole function, or we'll be able to take a function and graph from it. So first of all, phase shifts are actually horizontal shifts, okay? So I just want you to recall, but it's a different name for it, okay? So this, it says recall from section 3.4. But when we did stuff inside of the function, it was a horizontal shift. When we talk about trig functions, we call it a phase shift. So we have 4 things we're going to talk about. We have amplitude, periods, phase shifts, and vertical shifts. So if you look right here, this function f of t equals a sine bt plus c plus d. This is going to be what our function is going to look like. And we need to be able to pull the pieces out of this function. Now sometimes you won't have a d, and sometimes a is going to be 1, and sometimes there'll be no c. And if these are the cases, then you'll accommodate that within these equations. Please write this down. This is super important because we're going to use this for the whole thing. So please write down the formulas for amplitude, phase shift, period, and vertical shift. Sine and cosine, the functions are exactly the same except for one's sine and one's cosine. And we don't actually talk about tangents with these. So in this one it says state the amplitude, period, phase shift, and vertical shift. So the first thing we're going to do is the amplitude, which is the absolute value of 7, which is 7. So the amplitude of this function is 7. The period is 2 pi over 1, because 1's the number in front of the t, which is simply 2 pi. The phase shift is negative c over b, so it's going to be negative 3 over 1, which is negative 3. And the vertical shift, there is no number here, so the vertical shift is 0. All right, so on your own, you're going to go ahead and do this now on your own. Okay, try, see if you can find all of these pieces first, and then check. So going over the practice problem, all right, the very first thing, my amplitude is the absolute value of 3, which is 3. My period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. My phase shift is negative pi over 2. And I think I wrote this down wrong. Phase shift is negative c over b, and c is that should be a negative. This should be positive. Sorry about that. Positive pi over 2. I thought I fixed that. Okay. We're not doing this one. Okay, example 2. Now, this is the hard part. This is saying we're going to give you the amplitude, the period, the phase shift, and the vertical shift, and you have to work backwards to figure out what a, b, c, and d are. So in this problem, I'm going to write down my function first. A sine bt plus c, okay, plus d. So this is, I didn't put parentheses in that, that's good. Okay, so the amplitude is, A is the amplitude, which is 1. So A is equal to 1. This is almost always the same thing. Okay, now to find the period, we're going to have to say 2, which is the period, equals 2 pi over b, and solve for b. So these ones we have to work backwards to solve for the problem. So I get b is equal to pi over, b is equal to pi. Okay. B is equal to pi. And now we're going to look at c. C is going to be 3 is going to equal negative c over b. We know b is pi, so we're going to solve that now for c, and we get negative 3 pi. And d simply equals 4. That's the easy one. So now we're going to plug all these pieces into the function. So I get 1 sine pi t minus 3 pi plus 4. So once I solve for all of them, I plug them back into the function. Okay, now you're going to do this one on your own. set them equal to the pieces and see what you can do with it. These are fractions. They shouldn't be that much harder than the one we just did. Okay, now we're going to go over the practice problem. So the amplitude is obviously it's 8. That's easy. And the D is 4. We know that. So finding the hard part is the B and the C. So 1/2 equals 2 pi over B. We multiply both sides by by B, and then when we multiply both sides by 2, we get 4 pi. So that's B. And then 2/3 equals negative C over 4 pi. We multiply both sides by 4 pi. We get 8 pi over 3 equals negative C, so C equals negative 8. So it's 8 pi over 3. All right, and then we plug them all into the formula. So I get 8 sine 4 pi t minus 8 pi over 3 plus 4. Okay, we're not doing this one. And there's your assignment.